When lighting a real-world scene, each and every object that's positioned in the direction a light shines would, as you would think, be hit by that light. There's not a whole heck of a lot that can be done about that. CG lights, on the other hand, are a different story, where you have a much greater level of control over not just what's lit and not lit by a particular light, but also just what objects in the scene will both cast and receive a shadow from a given light. They're advantages that any Hollywood lighting director would love to have, but unfortunately doesn't. This video will explore some of those lighting options. I'm going to be using a file named Light and Shadow Exclusion to show you some of those tricks. You can find it in the Working Files folder for this chapter. In 3ds Max, you can actually selectively choose just what objects in a scene will be illuminated by a given light. And that ability opens up a huge range of lighting possibilities as you attempt to create the greatest level of realism possible in your projects. What we have in the scene is 3 objects: a drinking glass, a plate, and a tabletop. There's also 3 lights, 1 spotlight and 2 omnis. Each light casting a different color, with each light's icon, which you can most easily see in the top view, representing the color of light that specific light is casting. So the spot is throwing red light, while the omnis are set up so that one hits the scene with green light, while the other illuminates things in yellow. All 3 lights are currently hitting each of the objects in our scene. What we're going to do is see if we can't have the red light hit only one object, the green light set up to exclusively hit another, and the yellow light instructed to cast its illumination only on a 3rd object in our scene. Okay, let's do this. Let's say that we want the red light casting spotlight only to hit the table underneath the plate and drinking glass. In the top view, let's go ahead and select the red OmniLight icon. We'll now go over to the Modify column, and in the General Parameters section, we'll find a button that says Exclude. Let's go ahead and click on that option. The dialog that opens gives us the opportunity to selectively choose which objects in our scene can be included or excluded from being hit by the scene spotlight. The objects in our scene are listed over in the left-hand column. The option allowing you to either include or exclude a particular object is over on the top right. You'll see the 2 names. To identify which object will have its lighting altered, you'll move that object's name to the right-hand column. That can be done by either selecting the object that you're wanting to control, then clicking on the double arrows between the columns, the ones that point to the right, or by simply double-clicking on the object's name. In the list on the left, let's go ahead and select the table. Using now the arrows that separate the 2 columns, we'll click on the one that has the 2 arrows pointing to the right. That'll reposition the table to now being over in the right-hand column. To choose whether the table object will be included or excluded from being hit by the red spotlight, up at the top, we'll change the option from Exclude to Include. Once we've done that, we can drop to the lower right-hand corner of the dialog and click OK. So the way that we now have things set up, the only object that the red light will now illuminate will be the table. Let's see if that's the case. We'll head up to the right-hand side of the toolbar and click on Render Production. Now, the reason it's a little tough to accurately tell what's happening here is because although the red light is now being limited to lighting the table is still being hit by all 3 lights. The only thing that we've really adjusted so far is restricting the red light as to what it'll hit. The other 2 lights, as would be expected, are still lighting everything in the scene. We're going to do that a little differently though than the technique that we used in the first example. We'll close the render, then back in the top view, select the green Omni. Heading back to the Modify column, we'll again click on the Exclude button. This time around, let's reposition both the glass and the table to the right-hand column. I'll do that by individually double-clicking on each. As to the Exclude-Include option, I'll leave that set to Exclude. Let's now close the dialog and render again. You can see the change that's made. The yellow light, though, is still hitting all 3 objects. Let's go back into our viewports, this time selecting the yellow Omni icon. Heading back to the Modify column, we'll again click on the Exclude button. Let's now take the glass object over to the right-hand column by double-clicking on its name. Now, I'm kind of curious as to what would happen if we excluded the glass from the light. Let's leave the option up at the top set to Exclude. We'll close the dialog and render again. Now the glass isn't being hit by any light. The yellow light now affecting only the table and the plate. Let's change that around. We'll click on the Exclude button again to open the dialog. Leaving the glass object in the right-hand column, we'll change the Exclude Include option to Include. Once we've done that, we'll again close the dialog and re-render our scene. So now each light in our scene is individually lighting up a different object. The green light lighting up the plate, the yellow light illuminating the glass, and the red light set up exclusively to hit the table. Now, there's another thing I'd like to show you. In addition to being able to control what light illuminates what object, 3ds Max also gives you the flexibility of picking and choosing which objects in your scene will cast and receive shadows. Let's do this. We'll turn off both of our Omni lights. We'll change the color of our spotlight to white, and we'll make sure that the spot is back to illuminating all 3 objects in our scene. To turn the Omni lights off, we can do that directly inside the viewport. We'll close the render, head over to the selected light, then right-click. From the options on the top left, we'll simply turn the light off. Now, you could also have done this over in the Modify column. We'll do that for the green Omni. Selecting it in the viewport, we'll head back to the right-hand side. In the General Parameters section, under Light Type, we'll simply uncheck the On box. Now for the changes to our spotlight, we'll have to select that. Back on the right-hand column, we'll again click on the Include/Exclude button. We'll take the table back to the left-hand side by double-clicking on its name, and we'll change the Include/Exclude option at the top back to Exclude. As for changing the color of the light, we'll open the Intensity Color Attenuation tab. We'll then click on the red color swatch, changing it to white. Now, the multiplier on the light, its intensity, has been set pretty low. Let's take that number up to 1. Once we've done that, we'll re-render our scene. Okay, we're talking about shadows. Let's say that we don't want the glass to cast a shadow down onto the table. Here's what we'll do. We'll close the render, then in the viewport, select the glass object. We'll then right-click and from the menu, choose Object Properties. About halfway down in the settings on the right-hand side, you have a category named Rendering Control. Halfway down that category, you'll see Receive Shadows and Cast Shadows. Let's turn off Cast Shadows. We'll say OK, then render again. Now, as you can see, the glass is no longer casting a shadow down on the table. Now, there is another way that we could set this up. Let's go back to the glass, reactivating the Cast Shadow option. This time, we'll select the table, turning off its ability to receive a shadow. We'll close the box and render again. Now, there's still shadows being capable of making it into the scene. We can see that by simply moving the plate off to the side and up so it casts the shadow onto the side of the glass. Now, even if it intersects the glass for just a moment, that's fine. We're simply trying to prove a point. Let's render again. There's your shadow coming from the plate, making its way to the glass. Notice the table is still not receiving a shadow. That's exactly the way that we set things up. So that's what's up with both including and excluding objects from being hit by a light, and how you can go about controlling just what scene objects receive and cast shadows. All extremely helpful tools in lighting a CG scene, so be sure to put them to work in your personal projects. I'm going to go ahead and save the scene out as Light and Shadow Exclusion Completed if you'd like to go in for a look.